What's up guys, it's Scher talking, welcome back to my channel. On today's video, I'll be making a preview for the Romancing Festival Mirsa banner that just got announced. This banner will be coming by itself, no other companion banner, and it may be a good time to save your gens if you are thinking about summoning for Saga Emerald Beyond banner. There are reasons to summon for this one as well, and I'll be explaining. We are here on Reddit, thanks so much, hands for the tree as always. Mirsa got buffs to SGR and Endurance, only that. Well, he needed buffs to SGR because our damage dealers now have a lot of SGR, and he's not really a nuker. He can do good damage because of some stuff. Now, he starts the fight with 14 BP and grants himself Nullify Shadow, so he doesn't take shadow damage, and also Armor's Bright. When you use a Sun attack, you get 1 BP, there's no limit, you can get as much as you have chase attacks. You also self-cast a defense boost that will decrease damage taken by 20% according to JP, and you then buff all status by 5% to all allies. He also gets 35 points of OG Gouge by the end of a turn. Now, you want to cast this skill to everyone, right? You have to use skill number 2, 6 BP, B power, slash and sun attack, so it still triggers all of his mechanics. Before attacking, he casts Armor Bright to all allies, and then grants himself another OG Gouge few of 35 points. So, Mirsa gets 70 points of OG Gouge easily. And if you are using the over accelerate formation, you will get to 85. If he gets hit twice by the enemy, he is already on overdrive. Or if you use people like Sheree, Hawk, or Delia, they will easily feel his overdrive gouge without any type of problem. Because he has this effect double times, every time that he uses an attack, he gets 10% buff of all status for everyone. He has a chase attack. That means that he then buffs 20% on overdrive, he chases again. That means in that case he buffs 30%. Okay, so he always chases with skill 3 that attacks randomly 5 times, and he has a 10% chance to buff any of the 8 different status to all allies. Because he hits 5 times, you have 5 times the lottery to hit any status buff. Well, this was buffed in global because on JP was just to self. It got a bigger damage instead of E, it's just D. I will have to say that this is not that powerful, and 5 hits, not 8 hits like Ihachi, but each hit theoretically deals more damage. That is not accounting for everything else. But if you use this skill and then chase with it, it's 10 hits. And if you have someone that decreases the sun resistance or slash resistance of the enemy, it can actually be okay if you're bringing your Mirsa as a support as well. On overdrive, he chases with Silver Light Dance. That is the AoE attack that he had a chance to chase with in the past version, where he will be healing HP for everyone. Because it's on overdrive, he'll be healing at least 1.6 thousand easily. On turn begins, he casts an attack boost of 15%, but also 5 times Sun Elemental Enhance, meaning that he can get up to 115 for himself, and then he gets 15% for everyone and 100% extra for those that have Sun attacks. Sword Intrinsic gives him 30% damage increase at all times, 37% chance to evade resisted attacks, and 40% damage reduction when taking the hit. Okay, so he has skill number 1, that is a Silver Sword, that attacks twice. Why? Because this case, if you use this on overdrive, for example, you can attack 4 times. Because he always guarantees a chase and another one on overdrive to buff all status for everyone by 40%. But you can also use this skill tree, like I said, instead to use more damage. He has a 0 BP skill from his past version that can be inherited, so that he always has sun attacks instead of using a normal one. And if you just want damage, left fork will do more damage as well. But there is also the skill from his past style that costs 10 BP, and it carries a 50% chance to chase with Silver Light Dance. So theoretically it can be easier to use since he will need less BP. Just remember that when he chases, he gets 2 BP because of the double effect here, and the normal skill you choose will also give him 2, so he has at least 7 BP per turn, or 9 on overdrive, or even higher if you're chasing more times, either by skill number 1 or by use of Silver Light Dance via inheritance. So Mirsa is a good style, you cannot say that he's not. His damage is not really high as our recent damage dealers. His support is good, but could be better because he gives BP, okay. But then the defense boost is just to character that is using Sun attack, unlike Forneus and some other leaders that give you a passive that when you use a sun attack, you'll be triggering effects for everyone. So it may not be the ideal type of support right now, because some fights are asking us for very specific combinations. For example, how you can only use indirect sun attacks. For example, in that case, Mirsa cannot even be in the fight. So you cannot easily make full sun squads without some compromises. But he deserves at least a 4 out of 5. And I believe that he's better as a sun damage dealer than as a slash damage dealer. If you have summoned for Creator, and if you have Goddess, if you have Leon, it's a good start to make a full squad of sun damage dealers. Moving on, we have Darque, and Darque has 97% endurance and will, very low volleys because he actually wants to evade, and 125% dexterity and 117% agility. He looks like a character released from past months. His status are not that great, but then they gave him Conceal. As long as everyone is alive, he has 50% chance to evade enemy attacks. Sword Intrinsic gives him, again, 37% chance if he is resisting the enemy attack, and then he decreases damage taken by 40 if he is resisting, and alongside 30% damage increase at all times. He then gives Elemental Enhance for Pierce for everyone by 20% 5 times, reaching as much as 100, and then another attack boost of 15% every turn, so 115% to himself, 115% for others that use Pierce, and just 15% for those that don't. On turn begins, he has 2 different ways to land support that increases damage. Via Weak Point Pierce. If you use Pierce attacks on the enemy will decrease the defense to Pierce by 20. And will also self-debuff Endurance and Will. So you'll be doing more damage because the defense is decreased, but also because Endurance and Will is decreased. Endurance and will also help you deal with Road Blocker right now, if you care about that. When you land an attack, you recover 1 BP. And when you attack, you have a chase called Blue G Spike that has A power. And then it has a 50% chance to chase again with the D power attack that heals his HP. Well, it's needed because if he gets hit, he's gonna take a lot of damage. Then he has a 50% chance to chase with skill number 3. That is a 4-hit attack that has Pierce attack boost, improving the Pierce damage by 25% as a chase, or at 30% as a command on each attack. It has Pierce and Shadow damage, so that's cool. Double elemental. And it's 11, he already starts the fight with 11 BP, that's great. And if you get this as a chase, you're going to improve your damage by a lot. But he only has a chance to chase with this. In the current game, he needed a guaranteed chase. And on the start of the fight, you actually want to use skill number 2. Because it's 1, it's fast, and before attacking, you apply another weak point, Pierce. So if you use Pierce attacks, the enemy gets another defense down of 20%. But this recharges every 4 turns. I don't know why they made this. Because ScherBR can recharge that easily, and he has a 2 usage skill that decreases the enemy resistance and also applies other effects in the party. So it's unstable. You will not be doing the same damage every turn. He will sometimes do more, sometimes do way less. I don't really like this type of design right now in the game, because we have to defeat bosses as fast as possible to avoid having to deal with extra defenses. So, okay, you only need to defeat the boss once, but if you care about your time and don't want to keep restarting the fight, this is not really that great. Sadly, Darque is made more for Remembrance, where he can help you beat the Road Blocker. Will also be used if you have other Pierce damage dealers. Johan already decreases the Pierce resistance of the enemy, and he is much better. He also has Conceal and also has Intrinsic, but he has 15 damage blocks, gets overdrive all the time, chases twice, and even when he loses his blocks, he's better than Darque overall. So I believe he's the last interesting of the banner, and we receive a 3.5 out of 5. Moving on, we have Minstrel, and he's back on using clubs. That's great because we have way too many sword supports. They buffed his status to reach 110 for SGR, Endurance, Agility, Intelligence, and Will. Everything that matters. Dexterity is 89, and it's more than enough. And on turn begins, he grants everyone Minstrel's Concert for 2 times in 1 turn. If any of your characters use a blunt attack, they will apply buff break to the enemies. That is insane, really. We don't have any character that can do something like this. It's global exclusive. This will also be an easy way to defeat the 7 heroes in the special hero fights, because when you attack them, they self-buff. You'll be debuffing them and then buff breaking so that they cannot keep the status they just got. It's really insane and will help people that are having difficulty with those two challenges. Also, when landing blunt attacks, you will be debuffing the enemy's status by 10%. All status. So Minstrel himself can already debuff 20% just from this passive alone. And if you are using an AoE attack, it still debuffs 20%. That means that if you bring the 4 other characters with blunt attacks, you can debuff as much as 100% status of the enemies without having to rely on overdrive or any skill that costs BP. That is insane. He also applies defense down by 20% if you are using blunt attacks. He also casts Elemental Hands for blunt, improving blunt damage by 30% 5 times, so 150% damage improval on turn 5 onwards. That's great for characters that don't have many damage boost techniques. They will get a lot from Minstrel. When you attack, you always chase with Fantasy Lullaby. That is a very weak attack, AoE, but it has will debuff 15% and stun and sleep. This was made for Roadblocker if you haven't done that yet. Although for Club Remembrance, we already had characters that were good enough to finish that fight, but he just makes it much easier. On an overdrive attack, you'll be chasing with Eclat Darme that will improve attack boost by 15%, stacks for 2 turns, but also a defense boost that increases damage taken by 25% for 2 turns and stack. We also chase with Notes of Blessing. That is an attack that is AoE, heal very small, and gives you 1 BP. So you have to chase on overdrive to have 2 extra chases. If you are using him together with Mirsa, well, Fantasy Lullaby is blunt, but then Eclat Darme and Notes of Blessing is sun-based, so it will help buff your status while Minstrel is debuffing the enemy status. By the end of a turn, he also gets 45 points of OG Gouge, and with the Over Accelerate formation, we will have 60 points. He needs extra help to get to overdrive every turn in turns where he's already on overdrive. If he started the turn without overdrive, he will certainly get to it. For the second passive, he has attack down applied to all enemies every turn. That will decrease damage taken at the source by 5% only. Then he applies defense boost that will decrease damage taken for everyone by 15% and has an extra 2 BP. So he is a 5 BP per turn character. With Latent Blue Iron Wall, he improves his damage potential by 20% and then gets 15% defense up 5 times. He becomes very good defensively, but takes time to. For skills, the first one is free. It's just blunt, and it will recover the HP of all allies. His past version that uses his words has a slash and sun attack if you want to use him together with Mirsa for that extra sun support. The second skill is a 90 BP cost AoE blunt and sun attack that can debuff the enemy dexterity and intelligence by 30%. It will check for his own intelligence. That is great enough in my opinion. 30% dexterity intelligence debuff will be actually summoned to his already good debuff, so that in this moment he can debuff 50% of the enemy dexterity intelligence even on normal turns, and then 20% for all other status. On overdrive is gonna debuff much more than that. In overdrive you're gonna debuff 2 times extra for a total of 70% dexterity and intelligence debuff, and 40% debuff for all other status. That is if you decide to use this skill. You have skill 3, that is 10 BP cost, AoE blunt and sun, that when attack lands, it will cast Morale Down Large, decreasing the damage of the enemy by 35% on the source, and apply as a guard down that decrease defense by 35. None of those stacks, so if you want to use this skill right on start of the fight, on the turn 2 you want to use something else. That can be, for example, Eclat Darme that applies attack and defense boost if you have his first Minstrel style from New DX banner. So you can switch between it, and you're gonna apply lots of damage reduction while still being a all status debuffer. All that he requires is that you use other blunt attackers with him, and for example 2 other blunt attackers will be more than enough to probably deal with any type of challenge. You don't need a 5 blunt squad. Well, I'm planning to give this banner a silver award, with Minstrel being really the star of the banner, followed up by Mirsa and Darque. Although I'm a fan of these characters, thinking objectively, this banner is easy to skip. And if you are still pulling for either Urpina or Blue banner, you should still summon there to get what you want. And skip this for at least 1 week till you get the Saga Emerald Beyond releases and see if they are even more buffed. Nonetheless, this is just my opinion. What is yours? Please say here in the comment section. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't, and I hope to see you soon in the next video or live stream. Goodbye.